nature of armed conflict, which has indeed changed over the last years. What has been the implication of this change on the current understanding of humanitarian access? And how have these changes influenced access to affected populations, and among them, the internally displaced?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in the seminar. I regard this as part of my mainstreaming activities. It is quite true that armed conflict in recent years has changed. More and more internal armed conflicts have emerged in place of international armed conflicts. And these conflicts are often referred to as asymmetrical, in the sense that they are actually conflicts in which you don't have the traditional command structures of organized armed groups. So in a sense, you have groups that are not aware of international humanitarian law or human rights law, which may apply alongside international humanitarian law in times of armed conflict, and therefore they do not in any sense pay regard the protection of civilians, and also they do not actually see any sense in having individuals having access to internally displaced persons, because that is part of their political strategy. This has affected the way in which humanitarian access to IDPs is negotiated, and the way in which humanitarian actors approach these issues.
In light of the recent resolutions on internally displaced persons adopted by the General Assembly and the Human Rights Council this year, explicit recognition of your mandate and work has been given in these resolutions. So how do you see your role in facilitating access to IDPs in this context?
The resolutions are an important platform for my mandate. I think they strengthen the standing of my mandate to act directly in relation to states, and also they remind states of their responsibilities towards internally displaced persons. And the role of my mandate here is to maintain a dialogue with states and to make sure that when I go on missions, I address issues of access and open up the doors for the UN humanitarian agencies to have access to internally displaced persons. The resolution by the Human Rights Council, in particular for the first time, addresses directly the responsibilities of states in relation to internally displaced persons.
In your view, how should protection clusters adapt to such contexts, and in particular to internally displaced persons who reside outside camps? In addition, how successful do you think remote management strategies have been, and what other practical methods are there for protection-mandated agencies to go about their work?
Well, I think the protection clusters have been an important part of innovation on the part of the UN system to address the issue of internally displaced persons. I think in the past they tended to act more vertically in relation to each other. The challenge now is to be more horizontal and to be more sensitive and transformative in relation to the beneficiaries as IDPs, to have a human rights-based approach to assistance and protection. I think that's a challenge for the protection clusters. In terms of remote management, I think this is an issue where there cannot be direct access in places like Somalia, for example, where humanitarian assistance is more coordinated from, say, Nairobi. There are problems of logistics, of distance, and of coordination between the policy drivers in Nairobi and the humanitarian personnel on the ground. There are also logistical issues in terms of actually detecting what the precise needs of internally displaced persons are. And sometimes the quality of delivery of assistance cannot be measured because of the remoteness of the system.
In situations of constrained access, to what extent can the Universal Periodic Review serve as an effective mechanism for safeguarding the rights of the internally displaced?
Oh, it has already had a great impact, because I think that each time when states are up for Universal Periodic Review, they actually do invite mandates from the special procedures of the Human Rights Council. And I think that this is a very useful tool whereby the Council can put issues of access, issues of vulnerability and denial of economic, social and cultural rights to IDPs to states under review. For example, when I was at the General Assembly about 2 weeks ago, the fact that Sri Lanka is up for Universal Periodic Review meant that there was a great deal of attention on the plight of IDPs in northern Sri Lanka. And so you can see that relationship between UPR and countries that are up for it, and also the actors, including advocates and civil society, who pile pressure on the council as well as the country concerned. So it's a very useful tool.
Thank you very much.
That's all right.